Froster with the knee. Oh, Sexton is out. Oh, Pennington is throwing some leather tonight.
Jessica Eye with a standing arm triangle.
Rousey is already going for the arm. Tate got rocked. McMahon has some power in that right hand.
You are listening to the Women Throwin Leather podcast with your host, Dee Allen.
Hey guys, it's Dee Allen, and this is the Women Throwin Leather podcast. So today what I'm talking about is the Invicta 14 card that happened last night in Missouri, I believe Kansas City. If you didn't get a chance to see the card, you need to check it out. It was an amazing 10-fight card, and there was some phenomenal action last night. There were some just phenomenal fights. First, what I want to talk about is there was a little bit of a controversy going into Invicta 14, which started during the weigh-ins. Quite a large number of fighters missed weight for the weigh-ins on Friday. And so, you know, it's always a tough thing to cut weight. I'm not a fighter, so I don't know how hard it is to cut. I mean, right now, you know, personally, I'm trying to lose 30 pounds, and it's not obviously not for a fight, but just for my own personal benefit and for my own personal health reasons. But to, you know, just work out every day and control what you eat and get your nutrition under control is not an easy thing, you know, for anybody. I mean, especially, you know, the older you get, your body doesn't want to change like it used to when it was 20, you know. So it's, you know, and some of those fighters are not 20 anymore. I mean, they're, you know, some of those fighters are in their 30s. So it's, you know, it's harder to cut weight at 30 than it is at 20. You know, if you're 19, then, you know, it's if you're 19, it's easy to cut weight. But anyway, so I just wanted to touch base on that a little bit before I go into the actual kind of post-fight card wrap-up. And just kind of like a recap, essentially, is what I'm doing in this podcast. But first, before I do any of that, I want to first thank you for tuning in and for listening to this podcast. It's my first podcast that I've done for Women Throwin Leather, which is a show that I produce on YouTube. I cover basically the UFC and InvictaFC, the two main women's MMA components or promotions, I should say. You know, and those are the two main ones. You know, InvictaFC, Invicta Fighting Championships, and the Ultimate Fighting Championship, which is the UFC. But anyway, so thank you for listening to this, my first podcast. It'll be one of many. And yeah, so thank you for listening. So let's get into the weigh-ins. So basically, at the weigh-ins on Friday, which was 9/11, and just sending out my thoughts and prayers, you know, on that anniversary to the people that perished on that day. That was a tragic day. You know, I remember it like it was yesterday. I mean, I can exactly remember where I was when I heard the news and when I was working at the time. And anyway, so I'm sending out my deepest respect to those people, you know, that served on that day, that stepped up to the plate and helped out the firemen, the policemen, the first responders. You know, all of those people are just, you know, immeasurably indebted to you guys for what you did, and your bravery and your heroism. Anyway, so moving on to the weigh-in. So on Friday, you know, they had the weigh-ins, which they usually do every you know, the day before the fights. You have to weigh in and make weight in the different weight classes. And Invicta has quite a few weight classes because it's the only all-female promotion for women's mixed martial arts. So first up was J.J. Aldridge taking on Rosa Azevedo. And this was, you know, for the strawweight division. J.J., as far as I know, has always been on weight. She was on weight on Friday. Unfortunately, her opponent, Rosa Azevedo, who took the fight on short notice, and she was actually replacing Daniela Cortman, was about 3 pounds over, technically 2.2, but she came in at 118, and so that was an issue, you know. And so what happens in that case is if you're overweight, you have to surrender 25% of your purse to your opponent because you're coming in overweight, and then essentially what the fight becomes is a catch weight. So she was overweight. Next, we move on to DEANNA BENNETT versus KATJA KANKAANPAA. And KATJA KANKAANPAA was she's the former strawweight Invicta champion. She was on weight. DEANNA Bennett came in, and DEANNA Bennett weighed 117 pounds. So she was another fighter was overweight, and she apologized for it. She had some personal issues going on, and so it is what it is. She didn't make weight, and so again she had to surrender 25% of her purse to Katja. And so but the fight went on. And it was a battle. I'll go into that later. Next, we move on to the main event, which was the title fight between TONYA EVINGER and Pannie Kianzad. Now, first going in, TONYA EVINGER was actually a little bit over. She was over by 0.2. And then later on, on social media, or Instagram, I think it was, she was talking about how she went back and actually she weighed 134.8. So she actually did make weight for it. Later on, she actually was able to burn off that 0.2. Unfortunately, Pannie Kianzad came in at 136, so she was overweight. And the way the rules go is for a title fight, you have to come in at 135 or less. There is no grace. There's no give. You have to be on weight. So basically, since she was overweight, the fight became just a regular 5-round fight. There was no title would switch hands, regardless of who won or lost. Kind of watching the fights last night, and they were talking about that, they being Miesha Tate, who was sitting in the commentary box with Julie Kedzie and TJ, who were commenting through the fights, and they were doing the play-by-play, and Miesha came in, and Miesha made a comment about, if this is a title fight, and you're going into a title fight, how do you not make weight for a title fight? Because as Miesha said, essentially, this is your career. You're a fighter. It's your job to make weight. And when you have an opportunity like this to fight for the title, how do you screw that up? How does that happen? And Miesha didn't say it, but in so many words, she's saying that it's just lazy. Essentially, it's just lazy. You don't make weight for a title fight. Even if Pannie were to win, she wouldn't get the belt because she didn't make weight. So to me, it's, I agree with Miesha. It doesn't make sense, and Miesha was absolutely right. How do you not make weight, for a title fight? I mean, it's your job. All right, so that's pretty much the action of what happened during the weigh-ins, of the girls not making weight. Invicta 14, it was a 10-fight card. And looking at the card, let me first say Julie Kedzie seriously knows how to match up fights, because she has never disappointed, really. She has put together some amazing matchups, since she took over as matchmaker for Invicta Fighting Championship. She just knows how to match them, and she, being a former fighter herself, who I've been a fan of, since she fought Gina Carano back in the day, it's Julie Fireball Kedzie, out of Jackson Winklejohn, gym in Albuquerque. And so anyway, she's been an amazing matchmaker. So she put together a great 10-fight card last night for Invicta 14. And if you look at just the card, it's a great smattering of, girls making their pro debut who haven't fought pro yet, all the way to TONYA EVINGER, who's like 16-5, who's a veteran of the sport. I mean, she's been fighting since the days of Elite XC. So it's a great smattering of talent, across the board, just a wide variety. Right away, let's move into the first fight of the night. Kicking off the fight card, they had the lightweight division, which is 155 pounds. And it was two fighters making their pro debut. It was Rachel Wiley and Felicia Spencer from Canada. Both were 0-0, so they're 0-0, looking for their first win. And it was an amazing fight. I mean, just right off the bat. In the first round, Felicia Spencer took Wiley down, just started punishing her with some vicious, vicious elbow strikes. And it was just, it was literally like a one-sided beatdown. I mean, you got to check it out. It was an amazing fight. It was amazing, amazing debut from Felicia Spencer. Very impressive. Then they moved on to the flyweight division, which is 125 pounds. Aspen Ladd versus Amanda Bobby Cooper, both who are 1-0. So they've only had one pro fight. And This another great matchup. The first round, Aspen Ladd was just slightly dominating. Bobby Cooper had an armbar attempt. Second round, Aspen Ladd came out and put on a clinic. I don't know what happened between the first and the second round in her coach's corner, but she came out of the second round and just put on a clinic and just crushed Bobby Cooper with some vicious elbow strikes. But I got to give a shout out to Bobby Cooper, though. She is seriously one tough fighter to endure the beating that Aspen Ladd put on her. It was just it was crazy. And now we move on to the strawweight division, which is 115 pounds. Should I do it in my announcer voice? In the strawweight division, 115 pounds. Now, this is the catchweight fight, so J.J. Eldridge versus Rosa Azevedo. It was crazy. In the first round, J.J. delivered some nasty knees from a tie clinch and just started throwing and just landed some nasty knees and just dropped Azevedo. It was a crazy fight. You got to check it out. So J.J. Eldridge versus Rosa Azevedo. Then they moved on to the atomweight division, which is 105 pounds. You had Lightning Liz McCarthy, who was 2-2, taking on JINH YU FREY. Now, this fight is one that I was really looking forward to. I've been a fan of JINH YU FREY since, a couple of Invictas back when she fought Jodie Esquibel. She was very impressive. She's a great fighter. And let me say this about JINH YU FREY. She has some of the fastest combos in Invicta. She's got more combos than a fast food restaurant. And she's got wicked fast hands. Just a really great fighter. And her ground game is not bad either. She's got a pretty good ground game. Her submissions are great too. So first round, kind of looked like Liz actually landed more strikes. JINH YU FREY had some great takedowns. Then we went into the second round. That round was it seemed pretty even. Liz was kind of throwing some kicks at her. Third round, McCarthy was definitely the aggressor, but Jin was just throwing some hard lefts, and so it was a pretty even fight. All the way through. Then we moved into the strawweight division, which is again 115 pounds. This was Sharon Jacobson versus Jamie Moyle. Sharon is currently 3-1. Jamie was 3-0. So it was great to see Rocky Pennington was cornering for Sharon Jacobson, who I'm a big fan of. Rocky. She's a UFC fighter in the 135 division. She won her last fight by submission. It was great. Great to see her beat her last opponent. It was a rematch, and she needed that win, and it was great to see that. So first round, Sharon basically was controlling the action, kind of pinning Moyle against the cage, and it was pretty much just a grind fest against the cage. Second round, Moyle just was throwing punches and kicks and actually hurt Jacobson. It hurt her a little bit, stunned her, she got rocked, but it didn't seem to faze her. She kept moving forward and just started grinding Moyle again against the cage. We go to the third round, Jacobson got a takedown. Again, just grinding Moyle. It was just, another one that was just a grind fest. Then for the next fight, they moved into the featherweight division, which is 145 pounds. And yes, this is the weight division that Chris Cyborg fights at. So we had Cindy Dandois, who is 5-2, taking on Megan Anderson, who was making her Invicta debut. She's 4-1. Now, watching this fight, it's 145 pounds. And so they're fairly big women. And I don't mean that in a negative or derogatory way. Bigger women, and obviously opposed to the 115 division. It's just, they're 145 pounds, so they're bigger women. They hit harder. They have more power. It seems like they have more strength. They're just, big women. Round one, Dandois was incredibly strong on the ground. That's her specialty. She's a grappler. She's a wrestler. She's a grappler. She's really good on the ground, just really tough. And, had Anderson in a triangle lock for a long time in that first round. They go to the second round. Again, Dandois puts her in a triangle lock. Dandois was very impressive on the ground. She knew what she was doing. Again, we had another celebrity in the corner of Dandois. We have the number one contender, Miesha Tate, cornering for Cindy Dandois. So it was always great to see Miesha Tate. I've somewhat been a fan of her through the years, back in the Strikeforce days, and then up, to, once she joined the UFC. And But let me just, kind of deviate off of Invicta 14 for a second and just talk about Miesha Tate for just a brief second. What really cemented me as a fan of Miesha Tate, which I'm a fan of hers now, 100%, I'm in. I've been an admirer of her for a long time as far as her talent and her skill, but her last fight is really what put me over the edge and really what cemented me as a fan of Miesha Tate. What she brings to the cage, Miesha Tate is an amazing fighter. She studies her opponents, she adapts, she moves, she changes training camps, she moves locations, she moves to different gyms. She does whatever she needs to do to train to make herself a better fighter and to make herself better for her opponent. And she has moved beyond what she used to be as essentially a collegiate wrestler to an amazing striker. She's incredibly well-rounded now. Her striking has come up quite a bit from what it used to be, where, you watch some of her old fights with Julie Kedzie and like some of her really old fights where she would just put her head down and just barrel forward, swinging her arms. Now she actually is starting to throw her punches with pinpoint accuracy. I mean, she's a striker. She literally, to the true meaning of the word striking, she's a striker. She's not just punching. She's a striker. And so I've really become a fan of how much Miesha has just exponentially increased her talent and her skill. She's on a winning streak right now. Everybody they put in front of her, she beats. And people that you wouldn't think she would beat, she beats. When she beat Sarah McMahon, I was impressed by that. To beat an Olympic wrestler. Sarah McMahon was second in the world at the Olympics. And Miesha Tate's a collegiate wrestler, and she beat Sarah McMahon on the ground. That is no joke. That actually happened. I mean, you can go back and watch that fight, Tate versus McMahon, an amazing fight. Tate came out of that corner in the second or third round, I think it's the third round, and just incredibly dominating over Sarah, which was surprising because Sarah is so strong. On the ground, Sarah was nearly unbeatable. But obviously she's not, because Miesha, to give it away, Miesha beat her. If you get a chance, go back and watch that fight, Tate versus McMahon, an amazing fight. Now back to your regularly scheduled program. So the next fight was in the flyweight division, which was 125 pounds. This was probably, in my opinion, one of the best fights on the card. It was an amazing, phenomenal performance from both fighters. Each fighter gave 100%. So you have Wonder Woman, Rachel Ostovich, who was 2-1, taking on Andrea KGB Lee. Or, as I like to say it in my Russian accent, Andrea KGB Lee. She was 2-1. She was taking on the Rachel Ostovich. So this, right off the bat, just an amazing performance. Round one, Andrea Lee was just incredibly aggressive and just essentially stalking Ostovich. Caught her with numerous kicks to the body. Ostovich was on the ground, and Lee threw this axe kick to her abdomen, which was crazy. And then threw a couple more leg kicks to the body, had these body shots against Ostovich. And you can see in one of them, she hurt Ostovich. She was hurt. Just a testament of Ostovich's durability. She continued on. She fought through it. She pushed through it. Incredibly tough. Going into the second round, Ostovich comes out with these spinning back fists, which, very impressive. Impressed the crowd, impressed the commentators, and impressed me. It reminded me of Tiffany Van Sust, Tiffany Timebomb Van Sust, who loves to throw those spinning back fists and the spinning elbows. Let me just say, the spinning elbows are wickedly dangerous. If you spin an elbow and hit someone in the head, that you can knock them out. It's crazy. In one of Tiffany's fights, she threw this spinning elbow and clocked the chick in the head, and man, you could tell it rocked her. It was crazy. In the second round, Andrea Lee just clocked her with a left and dropped her. Andrea Lee just looked so dominating in that second round, and Ostovich took a hard kick to the face. It was crazy, it's just a testament to how tough and durable, how resilient Ostovich is, and she's an amazing fighter. Third round comes. KGB continues with the body shots on Ostovich. You could tell that Ostovich was hurt. She grabbed her side a couple of times, and it looked like the fight was going to get stopped, but Ostovich pushed through. At some point in the fight, she got cut, and she started bleeding from the forehead or her eye, or somehow some kind of blood was coming. She was bleeding from her head, and it was an incredible fight. The thing about that fight, though, is it just was wall-to-wall action, all 3 rounds. Andrea Lee, I think, actually got Performance of the Night. Rachel Ostovich, I got mad respect to Rachel Ostovich, the Wonder Woman. So the next fight was in the bantamweight division. It was Roxanne Modafferi, who is 17-12. Yeah, do the math on that. How many fights has she had? Versus Mariana Moraes, who was 9-2. Roxanne Modafferi is just a great all-around fighter. You can't deny it. She's had, nearly 30 fights in her career, pro fights. And she brings it every single time. She can never be counted out. So round 1, Roxy was on top most of the round. She got her to the ground. Roxy got on top. She was on top most of the round. We go into round 2. Again, Roxy's on top. Basically, top control, was landing strikes, some great ground and pound. Takes us into the 3rd round. Roxy seemed in a little bit of trouble because Mariah got her in a serious guillotine choke, which, everybody thought that was it. This is going to be a finish right here. She's going to finish her, and Roxy's going to lose. And somehow, I don't know how, but somehow Roxy pulls out of the guillotine choke and reverses it. She gets her on top, starts landing some ground and pound for days. And, at the end of the fight, it was great. Roxy just humbly asks for a title shot. Said, I would like to fight for the title. And she said she would like to fight maybe Barb Honchak for the flyweight title, the 125 pounds. Next fight, we move into the strawweight division. It was Katja Kankaanpaa versus DEANNA BENNETT. Now, this fight is an interesting fight because going into it, Bennett, obviously, like I said previously, she was overweight, so it was a catchweight fight. Katja goes in at 10-2-1 is her record. She's the former Invicta strawweight champion. DEANNA BENNETT, another great striker, just a great grinder. She's undefeated. She was 7-0 going into the fight. It was pretty even. Kankaanpaa was just landing some great setup strikes for, winning for a takedown. Bennett had a guillotine choke. The thing I love about Katja Kankaanpaa, though, is she's just a great technical fighter. She will throw strikes that will set up her takedown. So she won't just shoot in for a takedown, but she'll set up the takedown with a couple of strikes here and there. For the most part, it was just a grind session with Katja Kankaanpaa, just dominating her. But I will tell you, this fight went to a decision, and in my opinion, it was just bad judging. Because there's no way in hell that fighter won the fight that she did. There's no way in hell she did. Everybody on social media was upset about it. The commentators even made a comment. I think Julie even said she didn't agree with it. There's no way that I put it on Twitter. I said, I do not agree with that call at all. I mean, there's no way that fighter won that fight. That's just bad judging. Because anybody watching that fight, clearly you could see that the one fighter dominated all 3 rounds. And even at the end of the fight, the fighter that won it said, I'll admit it, I was lazy in that round. I just didn't bring it. So she even admitted it. So it's just bad judging. So I guess the lesson here, like Dana White always says, never leave it in the hands of the judges. And that's easy for me to say that because I'm not a fighter, but just looking at it from a logical standpoint, if I was a fighter and I wanted to move my career in a certain direction or elevate it in a certain direction, which would be to win fights. That's my goal as a fighter, is to win fights and fight for the title and become the best I can be. That's the goal of every fighter. I would not leave that in the hands of judges because essentially you're doing your best and you're saying, well, I did my best and we'll see what they think. Well, your career is dependent upon what they think, they being the judges. To me, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you let your career be based on what someone else thinks? how good or bad you did. Hear me loud and clear. I'm not getting down on Katja Kankaanpaaa at all, or anybody who leaves their fights in the hands of the judges. This is just my opinion. It's my point of view. This is just what I think. You know, I still think they're all great fighters. It's their decision. You know, they decide to leave it in the hands of the judges. And when you do that, you have to abide by that. You know, you have to go by what they who won the fight. Essentially, you made that choice to leave it in the hands of the judges, and so you have to abide by that. So the next and final fight, the main fight on the card, was in the bantamweight division, 135 pounds. It was supposed to be a title fight between Tonya Evinger and Pannie Kianzad, but unfortunately, Pannie didn't make weight. But it was supposed to be a title fight, and it wasn't. But it was still 5 rounds. Let me just first say I've been a big fan of Tonya Evinger since the days of Gina Carano. She's just a great all-around fighter. She has a wrestling background. She's incredibly strong, incredibly durable, and she's just a vicious, just a great fighter. You know, she's just a great fighter. And it's kind of funny because watching this fight, you know, and listening to the commentary and watching social media and you know, live tweeting the event and everything. And the word that kind of stands out for this fight was, it was just a knockdown, dirty fight. Tonya clearly dominated Kianzad. Tonya was just brutal. I mean, it was crazy how dominating Tonya was. At one point in the fight, Tonya comes out and just punches her in the face and drops her with one punch. I mean, that's how dominating Tonya is and how strong and how tough a fighter she is. It was clearly a one-sided fight. And it was funny because, you know, I was tweeting about it too, and somebody else tweeted that, yeah, Kianzad had no business even being in there with Tonya. I mean, you could clearly see from the moment the bell rang in the first round that Kianzad was in way over her head. What I mean by that, and what the guy on Twitter meant by that, is as far as skill level, you can see that Tonya's skill level was far superior above Kianzad. I mean, it was a one-sided fight. Tonya was just 100% dominating. She's tough to beat. They call her triple threat for a reason. You know, she's really just tough to beat. And that basically wrapped up the card. You know, that finished the card right there with the non-title fight. But yeah, that's it for me. I just want to thank you for listening. You guys are awesome. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Instagram. Follow me on Periscope. But anyway, thanks again for listening. I am D. Allen, and this is the Women Throwing Leather podcast.